Welcome everybody to the New Fly Fisher. I'm your host, Colin McEwen. In today's show, we're going to be talking about streamer fishing. We're going to talk about tactics, techniques, and why big fish are so attracted to streamers. Next to nymph fishing, this is probably one of the most effective ways to catch big trout, big bass, big anything. Streamers are the way to go. It's going to be a great show. I know you're going to enjoy it. Stay with us. That was awesome. These are extremely strong fish.
There you go. Oh, nice.
Oh yeah, good fish, good fish.
Yes.
Got him. Yahoo! World record.
We talked earlier about having the optimum conditions. Here we've got
A good example of the family Heptageneidae, very flat.
music, sweet music. This is why you need a lot of backing.
The new Fly Fisher is made possible thanks to Scientific Anglers, makers of Mastery Series fly lines, Sage Performance Fly Rods, Loon Outdoor Products, fishing with a conscience.
On today's show, we're going to examine one of the most effective patterns an angler can use to catch huge trout and other species, streamers. Streamer patterns and the way they are used have evolved a great deal over the last 20 years. In the past, the accepted practice was to dead drift or swing patterns such as a gray ghost or muddler in the current. Today, new available equipment technologies and redesigned patterns combined with refined fishing methods have made streamers one of the top means of catching big fish.
That's what we came out for.
Streamers, like nymph patterns, are one of the deadliest options fly fishers have for enticing truly large fish to strike. In order to understand why, it is important for us to examine the growth and development of a typical fish. For the purpose of this research, we will examine a trout's life cycle. It is critical to understand how and why trout become big. Certainly they learn how to avoid predators such as eagles, fishers, and even their own species. But the fundamental change is their diet. Juvenile trout are usually invertebrate feeders. However, by the time they reach a size between 12 and 16 inches, they have begun a shift in their principal food source from invertebrates to flesh. The reasoning is quite logical. Their growing bodies demand more nourishment than is usually available in your atypical ecosystem. So they begin to predate on baitfish, sculpin, darters, and even their own species. This is not to say that big trout do not continue to eat insects. They do. In fact, they often dominate the best feeding lies where they can easily ingest large quantities of invertebrates with minimal expenditure of energy. This is one of the benefits of being at the top of the food chain. Additionally, in some tailwater systems, large trout don't have to hunt for other fish as often since there is such an abundance of other forage such as freshwater shrimp, which helps them grow. A good example is the White River in Arkansas. However, the fundamental reality is that big trout rarely feed on the surface because they don't want to expend the energy or expose themselves to predators, which explains why so few truly large trout are caught on dry flies. To consistently catch trophy trout in most systems, you have to use streamers because their principal source of nourishment comes from hunting, killing, and eating other fish. One of the main sources of prey for big trout in river systems throughout North America is sculpin. Sculpin are a rarely seen species that hide during the day and come out at night to feed. They seem to be much like chameleons because they readily change the coloration to match the local bottom, which is why brown, olive, and black are usually the best colors to use. Patterns such as zoo cougars, bushy woolly buggers, strip leeches, and kiwi muddlers are excellent because they resemble the silhouette of a sculpin. Sculpin do not possess swim bladders typical of most fish, which is why they sit close to the bottom. The pattern you must use must be on or near the bottom when retrieved in order to realistically imitate this favorite prey fish of big trout. Silhouette and color are your two key elements when choosing streamer patterns. Based on local forage, fly fishers should pick flies that roughly resemble the outline, action, and color of primary prey such as sculpin. Kelly Galloup, who co-authored the famous book Modern Streamers for Trophy Trout, explained a little bit about this predator-prey relationship and why it is important to anglers, especially as it relates to species such as sculpin.
What we're trying to do is we're trying to get a fish, hit a trigger point with the fish that they can't really stop. If you're not hungry, food shows no interest. I mean, it just doesn't appeal to you. The smell doesn't, anything like that. So, but as a predator, even though the fish may not be hungry, he can't stop that triggering mechanism that says in his brain, I have to defend my territory. So what we did is we thought, well, if we could get a fish, and then we often refer back to like instincts of bears and things like that, because there's, bears maul people often, but they don't really eat people all that often as a food thing. You've simply intruded on the bear's territory, and you pay the price. He swats you around. The same thing's what we're trying to, and all predators being the same, cats will do it, dogs will do it, anything that you come into their territory, they'll respond. And seeing as how the trout is the biggest predator in the system, we decided that it wasn't likely you could take a traditional gray ghost, for example, and elicit a response from that big fish. Conversely, if you take a fly that maybe is 5-6 inches long and you splat it down in the water and then you try to escape, and that's the key. That's why we use such fast retrieves and why we hit the fly hard and we fish very aggressively. We're trying to elicit a predatory instinct in the fish that this little tiny gray ghost, although it's a great fly and it's a great searching fly for juvenile fish, the likelihood of a big carnivore-sized trout eating this as a territorial response isn't nearly as great as it would be to something like this or the bigger zoo cougars and things like that we fish. And that's why we run through the river as fast as we do. We're simply looking to offend a few fish, the bigger predatory fish, and get a response from them. We're not necessarily looking for the hungry fish. Now, if you've got a hungry fish, you invade his territory and he's hungry, that's just about a guaranteed, hookup.
There are key areas you should target with your streamers, whether fly fishing from a boat or when wading. Big trout all require that 3 principal needs be met: shelter, food, and access to security, such as deep water. Based on this hierarchy of needs, we can break down a river into specific location categories. The prime lies for big trout can be defined as structure where they can find shelter from currents and protection from predators. Usually prime lies lay adjacent to feeding lanes or faster current. As opportunistic hunters, this provides big fish both easy access to the feeding lanes for when a hatch begins, but also an excellent ambush point for attacking an unwary baitfish or juvenile trout. This is something streamer fishers need to understand. Prime lies include log jams, debris piles, undercut banks, shadows created by overhanging branches, tree root systems, ledges, and drop-offs. Of course, broken water or seams created by current around large rocks, boulders, and other structure also provides the key elements needed by big trout. Anglers are often surprised at where they find trophy-sized trout, but the reality is that they will be wherever they want to be, which is why it is smart for anglers to cast their streamers even to unlikely-looking water. Species such as brown trout will often be found in water less than a foot deep if the conditions are right.
What I'm doing here, Colin, is I'm fishing really a fall tactic, streamer fishing, and I'm fishing my fly pretty quick. We're using about a size 8 woolly bugger, little beadhead bugger, and I'm fishing that undercut bank as the river swings around here, and I'm giving it a lot of tip action. We're jigging it, and I believe they like to take it on the fall. It looks alive when you pull it and strip it from them, and then when you stop stripping, it drops. As soon as it drops, it looks like it's hesitated or wounded or something, and they pick it up. So I'm going to continue working around. This is that intermediate line which I like so much because it casts well and it sinks. So anytime you're stripping a woolly bugger or a streamer or anything like that in a lake or streamer or a river, I like this line here. It really does a nice job. It's my favorite casting line. Whoa, big boy. Good fish. Good fish on. Feels good. He isn't that big. He for today, he's the best thing I've had today. Feels pretty good. Nice and easy with him. He's hugging the bottom, whatever it is. This is right at the estuary. We're right here at Hebgen Lake. It feels pretty heavy. It's a good fish. Come on, baby. Oh yeah, that's a nice fish. I'll bet it's a brown. He's hugging the bottom and he's good size. Oh yeah, big boy. Real big boy. Come on, easy. Easy. This is nice fish. This guy's over 20. Big male. We got him. There's a fish for you. Wow, big male brown. And look at the hook came out. That fish is about 22 inches. Big hook jaw male brown right at the estuary of Hebgen Lake. They don't get any better than this.
No, well done. Look at the size of that
Look
guy.
at that on a little size 8 woolly bugger. Look at the size of that baby there. Wow. Let's get a shot of him. Geez, look at that fish. Look at the spots. Big hook jaw male.
Okay.
Yeah, let him go right away, and that just let him go back to live another day.
Okay. Tickle his belly.
He'll go on as 21.
Yeah.
Wow.
Bob.
Hey.
I can't even get my glove off. It's so tight.
Nice fish.
Well done, Bob.
Good fish. Right, we're right here at the estuary.
Everybody, if you want to catch big fish like that, use streamers. Nymphs work, yes. Dry flies work, but for real exciting takes, and as you just had there, or just pow strike, there's nothing like streamer fishing. In order to use streamers effectively, you have to have the right equipment. There's special rods, special lines that you have to use, and even the leaders are specific to this type of streamer fishing. Have a look at this. It'll explain a lot to you about the rigging system you need to use big streamers to catch big fish.
There are several rigging options for streamer fishing depending upon conditions. Based on the depth and where in the water column you need to put your fly will help determine the type of fly line, pattern, and leader setup you will require. In terms of matching the leader to the fly line, it is quite common for anglers to make mistakes in the appropriate leader length required. Here are some options you should consider. When using smaller streamers such as muddler minnows and Thunder Creek style patterns, most anglers will use a floating line. This will help you effectively fish a depth of 1 to 4 feet at most. A leader of 7 to 9 feet in length is ideal for this type of presentation. If you require more depth or particular action on your fly, then you add a split shot 6 to 12 inches ahead of your streamer.
There you are.
If you're using patterns such as bead-headed woolly buggers combined with an intermediate fly line, then you can shorten your leader to 6 to 8 feet in length and also increase the strength of your tippet. This shorter leader will give you tighter control of your fly for both casting and in the water in terms of presentation.
Get him in this quiet water here, we'll net him. He looks like a decent fish. How's he feel? I haven't seen him yet.
He's not too big, he's not huge, but he's a decent fish.
Oh yeah. Looks like a brownie.
Is that what it is?
Yep. Nice brown.
He took it on the second or third strip.
Get him up and well, there you go.
There you go.
Nice brown trout. Yeah, that's a nice 13-inch fish or so. Nice fish.
That's a good way to start the day.
Yeah. We're getting to that good water. Look at that nice undercut bank over there. So
I know, this prime territory, isn't it?
Oh, it's prime. Nice pretty marks on them. Nice wild fish too.
Yeah.
Nice
Isn't it
brownie.
beautiful? Let's get him back in.
Yeah, let
quick.
go. Nice. That's what it's all about.
There it goes.
There we go.
All right, that was
Hey.
great.
Good deal.
Usually you'll be imparting a lot of action on this type of streamer setup, so fish don't have time to examine your offering before making a decision whether to strike or not. This obviously allows you to increase your tippet diameter without sacrificing possible strikes. The only exception to this type of presentation is on lake systems or other still waters where you might want to slow down your presentation. If water conditions are clear, then you might need to consider using lighter tippets to ensure your strike ratio continues to be high. For using full-size streamers, such as large strip leeches or zonkers in combination with sink tip or full sinking lines, then your leader needs to only be 30 to 40 inches long. Your presentation is usually fast and often erratic, trying to key in on predatory triggers. The sink tip and full sinking lines help you get your streamers down fast in the water column, and the short leader provides good control and also ensures that the fly is in the strike zone. The equipment used with modern fly patterns takes advantage of recent technological developments. Full sinking lines and fast action rods are perfect examples of this. Kelly Galloup discussed fly lines and their applications for streamer fishing.
Well, Colin, there's, like you say, there's two basic types of line. There's a sink tip line and there's a full sinking line. Both come in different densities. The densities mean how fast they sink. The sink tips come in from anywhere from 5 foot to 25 foot, and some bigger actually, but for the most part you'll see that there's a 24-foot heads, which is the sinking portion of the line. And a sink tip line, there's a portion of it that floats, and the tip or the head is the part that sinks, the last 5 to 24 feet. But I prefer to use the full sinking line. The downside to the sink tip line is that it has a tendency to chase the floating portion of the fly line, so it's harder to keep a constant depth, if you will. The lines that I'm using here are basically all the same. There's not a lot of taper to these lines, so they're basically a level line. You have a small section at the end that reduces, but they're called density compensated or level sinking lines. And so we use, like I said, in the sink tips, there's also the same sink rates for the full sinking lines. They come from, there's several manufacturers. There's Scientific Anglers has one, Rio has one, Cortland has one, they're all have a little bit different sink rates. They're different, and they have different denominations that say one's a 5 and it sinks at X inches a second, and one may be a 6 and it sinks at, likewise. It takes different sink rates, but you have to read the boxes to figure that out. If you've got a slow sinking line and you want to achieve a certain depth, it's hard to do because the water carries it out. If you have an extremely fast sinking line, it drops through the column at whatever rate you want it to. You can get down a foot in 2 seconds, or you can get down 6 inches by simply beginning your retrieve quickly. You hear a lot of people say they don't like to cast these lines because they can't mend them, is what you hear most commonly. But the style of fishing we do, that has no relevance whatsoever because we do not mend the line. A mend is something you do to take drag off the fly. And we actually use the current to our advantage because we like the fly to be going downstream, so the head of the fly going downstream, so that everything that the line, the current creates in the line is a good thing for us. So the last thing we want to do is mend one of these lines.
Key to your success with modern streamers and advanced fly fishing equipment is to use the right retrieve in order to appeal to large fish's triggers. Author Bob Lindsman discussed the primary retrieve, which is known as the jerk strip.
Well, in our book, Modern Streamers for Trophy Trout, we cover quite a few different retrieving methods that you use under different conditions. The dredge technique, the old classic technique that most people use, which is just, a straight across or quartering down and let the fly swing. But we found through the years, and in fact, to be candid, Kelly's the one that taught me this retrieve, that the jerk strip retrieve is the most effective retrieve for moving really trophy-sized trout. And the way it works is that you want to pulse, you want to move the rod or the fly with the rod tip, and then you strip to take up the slack. And what that does is you move the fly whatever amount of distance you want to, 12 to 18 inches to 2 feet, with the pulse of the rod tip. You strip, and when you strip and bring your rod tip back to the starting position, it causes a natural pause in the fly. And the fly will pause, flutter, and almost swoon like a wounded prey item. And that's really what makes it effective. So what happens, the fly comes in and it violates, it intrudes on the big trout's territory, and it makes that dart to get away. And then it pauses like it's wounded you, so the big fish is going to jump on it. It's almost instinct. I mean, the fish doesn't really have, it's almost irresistible to him.
Key times to fish for big trout with streamers are during the transitional light periods. This is generally when big fish are most active. However, if you use some of the recommended retrieves, combined fly lines and patterns we have discussed, then you can overcome the issue of timing by appealing to the fundamental triggers of aggressiveness, hunger, and territorial response. There's no escaping the fact that big fish, whether brown trout, northern pike, or false albacore, they all need to hunt and eat bait fish and other similar forage in order to grow and survive. If you key into that need, then you'll definitely start catching more and larger fish than ever before.
Oh, that's a big fish.
Best of all, streamer fishing is very active and visually exciting.
Oh, that's a nice fish.
Well, I hope you learned a lot today about using streamers. The techniques we talked about, the equipment setup, etc., whether on a river or a lake, or for most species in North America, will work. I guarantee you. You just have to apply these different techniques and you're going to catch big fish, really big fish. So make sure you're using the right equipment to get those big fish in properly. From all of us here at the New Fly Fisher, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
The New Fly Fisher is made possible thanks to the Canadian Fly Fisher Magazine, Scientific Anglers, mastering the sport with science, Islander Precision Reels,